This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Border delays spoiled the holidays for Zimbabweans traveling home from South Africa. A year of lockdowns. How are African countries faring after coming out of difficult restrictions? And avoiding the holiday COVID-19 surge. New rules for those arriving in the US from the UK. Hello and welcome to you wherever you're joining us. This is Africa Live here on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up over the next hour. A look at efforts to empower local contractors to meet Africa's needs for critical infrastructure. And in the sports, young talent Galliano Boni set to take on the world with martial arts skills. Welcome to Africa Live. Now, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the attacks on UN peacekeepers in the Central African Republic. 3 people working for the organization were killed Friday in the lead-up to a general election amid fighting between rebel and government forces. The assault took place in the Dekoa and Bakuma regions of the embattled country. Guterres expressed his condolences to the families of those killed and the government of Burundi, where they came from. At least 15 people have reportedly died in recent weeks waiting in queues to cross the border from South Africa into Zimbabwe. Coronavirus screening is being blamed for the extended time taken for migrant workers to get clearance to return home for the seasonal holiday. Lines of cars and trucks were seen stretching for many kilometers on the narrow road leading to the Beitbridge port that serves as the main crossing point between the countries. Reports suggest that exhaustion and ill health owing to a lack of facilities at Beitbridge have contributed to the number of fatalities. The South African government is yet to respond. The southern African nation hosts an estimated 1.5 million Zimbabwean migrants. It is suffering a second wave of COVID-19 infections. Authorities suspect the surge in cases has been triggered by a genetic mutation of the disease. Now, global coronavirus cases are nearing 80 million, with the death toll surpassing 1.7 million. A mutated variant of the coronavirus is appearing in countries around the world. Besides the UK, the new strain was also found on the European mainland, with confirmed cases in Germany, Italy, France, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Singapore, Israel, Lebanon, and Japan are also reporting infections. This week, several U.S. health experts suggested the new strain is already circulating in the United States, but cases have not yet been confirmed. Scientists appear split over whether or not the new strain is more infectious. Different mutant strains have also appeared in Brazil, South Africa, and Nigeria. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it's investigating what appears to be another variant of the coronavirus in Nigeria. It was found in 2 patient samples collected in August and October in Nigeria's southwestern state of Osun. But health authorities in the West African nation say there is no cause for alarm as tests to establish if indeed it is a new variant continue. CGTN's Deji Badmus has more on that story.
Health authorities in Nigeria are not sounding the alarm bell yet on what the Africa CDC says might be a possible discovery of another variant of the coronavirus in the country. Here's how the head of the Nigeria CDC explained how the discovery was made and what's been done about it.
When this new strain was reported in the UK, what we did was work with Redeemers University, and they then looked through the historical archive of viruses that had already been sequenced. And through that retrospective analysis, found 2 viruses that were similar to the one in the UK, but not the same. So had a few similarities, but enough for us to say that this did not originate from the same population of viruses. So what we're now going to do with Redeemers University is collect a selection of other viruses, circulating in Nigeria now, so from the more recent cases, and try and compare what we have now to what we had previously in Nigeria, but also what is circulating abroad. So this is ongoing work that we'll be carrying out over the next few weeks to see whether we can explain some of the changes, some of the increased transmission that is happening in Nigeria, and to look at whether it is related to the virus or related, which is most likely to be the case, into behavior among individuals across the country.
Experts say the possibility that another variant of the virus might be in Nigeria is a serious cause for concern.
We should be worried, even though to a large extent the pathogenesis of these variants has not really been completely established, but to a large extent there is sufficient scientific information to actually tell us that the new variant actually enhances rapid transmission, and that is why we should be worried, and that is why we should quickly look for a way to stem this tide, to stop it.
Nigeria has seen a spike in COVID-19 infections recently, forcing the government to reopen isolation centers and reinstate some restrictions. It has also announced new travel rules for passengers flying into the country from the United Kingdom and South Africa, which have both confirmed new variants of the coronavirus.
All passengers coming into the country from the UK and South Africa on direct flights must use the Nigeria International Travel Portal to register, fill in their health questionnaire. They must upload a negative COVID-19 PCR result with a validity of not more than 5 days, and they must pay for a COVID PCR test at day 7 of arrival in country.
Authorities are appealing to people to adhere strictly to preventive measures like washing of hands, physical distancing, and the use of face masks. The government says it hopes to get a supply of COVID-19 vaccines by the end of January. It also targets to vaccinate around 100 million Nigerians by the end of March next year. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, concerns are growing in the U.S. that holiday travel will cause another surge of COVID-19 cases nationwide. New rules for passengers flying from the United Kingdom are now in place as cases in America approach 19 million, meaning 1 out of every 18 people there has been infected. Eddie's Tian San has more from Los Angeles.
Airline passengers traveling from Britain to the United States will now be required to provide a negative coronavirus test taken in the last 72 hours prior to their flight. Otherwise, airlines could bar them from boarding the plane. That's according to the latest measure by the U.S. Center for Disease Control. It's expected to take effect on Monday, and of course, it comes after a variant of the coronavirus has been detected in the UK. Experts are worried this new variant could be spreading a lot faster, and they also say that nearly half of all cases in England could be carriers of that variant. Now, several other nations have completely banned any kind of travel from the UK, and therefore this one is only considered a softer approach by the US. Here in Southern California, as the state has reported nearly 300,000 cases just in the last 1 week period, and they're really saying that the worsening situation here is pretty much offsetting any progress that is made elsewhere in the nation. At the same time, we are hearing hospitals reporting critically low levels of supplies, including oxygen and other kinds of equipment that are necessary to treat the coronavirus patients that are now arriving at these hospitals at a much faster pace than ever before.
Earlier this week, Singapore became the first Asian country to receive a batch of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. The island nation, which approved the jab last week, hopes to inoculate its entire population by the second half of next year. But beyond that, it also hopes to serve as a hub for vaccine distribution in the region. Miro Lu has the details.
As the first batch of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine touched down in Singapore, its Changi Air Hub showcased its readiness in swiftly and effectively handling the temperature-sensitive cargo.
For the transportation of the Pfizer vaccine, Pfizer has designed special boxes for handling those vaccines that could keep the vaccine at a minus 70 degrees Celsius. What we need to do is that upon arrival of the shipment, to make sure that the time for the shipment gets from the airplane to our facility is in the shortest possible time.
Beyond its own needs, Singapore has been beefing up its cold chain capability and infrastructure, which combined with strong air connectivity could help the city-state become a regional hub for vaccine distribution. With that in mind, Singapore set up a Changi-ready task force in October, which is made up of Singapore Airlines, logistics partners, and cargo operators.
Over the years, SATS and Dinata, the two ground handlers at Changi Airport, and task force members have steadily invested in their temperature-controlled warehouses and can process 375,000 tons of cold storage products annually.
The biggest risk for us and for most airports has always been the transport from temperature-controlled warehouse to aircraft. We've now got the cool dolly that allows us to transport goods all the way to the aircraft bay, which can be 35, 45 minutes. It also means for imports that the second pharmaceutical arrives, no matter where it is around Changi Airport, we can get that into the correct temperature within seconds of it coming off an aircraft.
SATS, meanwhile, can produce 4.5 tons of dry ice every day, which may be crucial to maintaining below freezing temperatures for pharmaceuticals. To further strengthen its position as a regional distributor, SATS now plans to expand its state-of-art cool port facility to other centers in the region.
With SATS having our network of facility across Asia and where we are building up the same capabilities that we have in Singapore in those facilities, we are in a position to ensure that when the shipments are shipped in between the major airports in Asia, temperature integrity is maintained.
While passenger traffic took a massive hit due to COVID-19, cargo flights at Changi Airport have tripled compared to this time last year. By positioning itself as a regional vaccine distributor, Singapore hopes to leverage the increase in cargo traffic to help its aviation industry get back on its feet. Mirolu, CGTN, Singapore.
Now, when COVID-19 cases started to spread across the African continent, several countries immediately put strong containment measures in place to curb the spread of the coronavirus. CGTN's Robert Nagila now revisits some of those interventions by African governments as they battled the pandemic in 2020.
By the time the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a global pandemic on March 11, 2020, no African country had imposed a lockdown yet.
We're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity.
By the end of March, several countries, including Morocco, South Africa, Nigeria, Senegal and Kenya, had all reported confirmed cases. By March 19th, Morocco, which had 63 cases, declared a state of emergency. Meanwhile, a week after recording its first case, Rwanda imposed the first total lockdown in sub-Saharan Africa on March 21st. By then, the Central African country had registered 17 confirmed cases. Among the measures taken by the government were a ban on movement for 21 days, except for essential services, the closure of its borders, land and air, except for cargo. On March 26th, after a spike in COVID-19 cases, South Africa imposed a total lockdown.
Those countries that have acted swiftly and dramatically have been far more effective in controlling the spread of the disease.
Kenya, meanwhile, imposed a partial lockdown in mid-March. The government introduced tax breaks, a $5 million package to support the tourism industry, and a moratorium on debt payments, among others, to support small businesses and protect jobs.
There is no doubt that this pandemic will test us, as it is testing all countries in every corner of the globe. But I don't believe that it will defeat us. If we pull together and everybody does their part, we shall, with God's grace, overcome the worst impacts of this virus.
African countries also adopted WHO guidelines on physical distancing, hand washing and the use of masks in public. But countries had to balance between imposing a total lockdown and avoiding the consequences of prolonged economic disruption. In some cases, security forces were deployed to enforce lockdowns. WHO says the first COVID-19 vaccinations in Africa will begin in mid-2021, which means the continent will continue to see some form of restrictions to control the spread of the pandemic for the foreseeable future. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Stay with us here on Africa Live as we go for a short break. Here's what's coming up. Concerns as armed groups intensify attacks across the Democratic Republic of Congo. And a different kind of Christmas. We sampled celebrations in some African countries.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Africa Live. Let's turn to the Democratic Republic of Congo now, where authorities have documented more than 2,000 deaths of civilians in the east of the country since last year. The killings were carried out by rebels in a region plagued by land conflicts, ethnic rivalries, and a battle over the control of mineral resources. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Violence by armed groups in the DRC has increased in the east and northeast of the country over the past 2 years. The fighting has left over 2,000 people dead and thousands of others displaced. The UN peacekeeping mission has been supporting the DRC army with logistics to end the rebel attacks in the east of the country.
The conflict is the most complex and is intertwined with economy of war, spoilers, community tensions, national and foreign armed groups. So everything is much more complicated, we would say more complex in Ituri and North Kivu and South Kivu. And hopefully, we hope that 2021 will be a year where we can enjoy a level of stability and a level of peace that allows the citizens of these three provinces to live their life peacefully.
Some of the armed groups have been financing their activities through the illegal mining of gold and other minerals. The DRC president ordered the Congolese army to launch a large-scale offensive against them last October. A few rebel leaders were arrested in the offensive, but many others are still at large.
A lot is actually being done, but compared to, if you look at the progress achieved, compared to the amount of grave human rights violations that have been perpetrated, we cannot say it's nothing. It's maybe insignificant, but we have definitely to continue to push, to support, and to provide assistance for them definitely to be in a position to do what we are actually expecting from them in terms of fight against impunity.
The UN estimates there are more than 100 armed groups operating in eastern DRC. They've been fighting over land, political power, and the control of minerals. A number of them expressed willingness to lay down their arms after President Tshisekedi took office last year. But the government's lack of funding for the disarmament program saw many of them return to fighting.
Les groupes armés continuent à semer la même terreur.
It is really unfortunate that armed groups continue killing civilians. I believe we should come up with better strategies to end the cycle of violence. We should stop pardoning rebels and integrate them into our national army, because that has failed to restore peace.
Most of the recent killings have been blamed on the Ugandan rebel group, the Allied Democratic Forces, operating in Beni territory, and the Cooperative for the Development of Congo in Ituri province. The violence in eastern DRC has led to a serious humanitarian crisis. Aid agencies say more than 100,000 people have been displaced since last year. The mineral resources in the east have fueled conflict and corruption by some government officials. The DRC president vowed to end the fighting, but is facing a political crisis that the UN says poses a security threat to the country. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Tunisian authorities say at least 20 migrants and refugees died when their boat capsized off the country's coast as they tried to cross the Mediterranean to the Italian island of Lampedusa. Regional authorities say the boat was overloaded and in poor condition. About 45 people were on the boat when it sank. Experts say illegal migrations have increased since the outbreak of COVID-19. Adnan Shawashi has the details.
Judge Murad al-Turki, a spokesperson for the Court of Sfax, says the boat's departure point was in the coastal region of El Awabid. Initial investigations show that 3 Tunisian nationals organized the illegal crossing.
The public prosecutor's office at the first instance court of Sfax was informed about the incident by the Coast Guard. The boat sank off the Tunisian coast with over 40 people on board. We are investigating the crime, which consists of facilitating illegal crossing of maritime borders, which caused death. The rescue and recovery of bodies operation is still underway.
Experts at the Center for Strategic and Diplomatic Studies explained that the coastline near the Tunisian port city of Sfax has become a major departure point for people fleeing conflict and poverty in Africa and the Middle East and searching for a better life in Europe.
Social development is necessary in order to control the wave of illegal and irregular migration. We need a new approach to tackle this crisis. We must work hand in hand with our European partners to improve the economic and security situation of migrants and offer new opportunities. The security approach is not enough.
According to the latest report published by the Tunisian Social Observatory and the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights, 1,298 undocumented migrants reached the Italian coast last November, against 90 in November 2019. Social scientists noted that the surge in irregular migration attempts has been caused by the COVID-19 crisis.
We must be careful because the pandemic has accelerated the pace of irregular migration since people have more reasons to risk their lives. The economic and social difficulties are similar in the continent. Tunisia has become one of the many departure points for geographic reasons. More African people will die in the Mediterranean if the economic crisis persists.
The International Organization for Migration has revealed that more than 620 people are feared to have drowned in the Mediterranean this year during the risky sea journey that has killed at least 20,000 people since 2014. About 17,000 people arrived in Italy and Malta this year by boat from Libya and Tunisia. The United Nations calls it the deadliest migration route in the world. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, Christians in Nigeria joined their counterparts across the globe to celebrate Christmas. This annual event, which commemorates the birth of Jesus Christ, is the biggest festival in the Christian community. But this year, Christmas has been observed differently due to the COVID-19 pandemic. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports.
Christmas celebratory service is a key part of the annual Christian ritual. But this time round, the situation is rather unusual. The COVID-19 pandemic has prevented the traditional large gatherings of Christian faithful who are now adapting to the new normal by observing all the health protocols.
The congregational aspect is greatly affected because people are afraid. It's reality. People are afraid of gathering. Now, for instance, if you come to church, you discover that we had to give, some meters space because of physical distancing. We have to distance people from one another. We don't hug. We don't greet. If we even want to shake hands, you have to shake hands with an able greeting, or you have to do a waving for somebody. So those aspects of our human existence and relationship are no longer gradually being eroded by the advent of coronavirus.
Christmas here is also marked with fun activities, carols, family gatherings, and much more. But fun spots, which used to be a beehive of activities, have recorded low turnouts.
Mary, did you know it's your baby boy, it's Lord of all creation?
Christmas carols like this one are now held in private homes, but that has not dampened the spirit of the festive season.
It was so wonderful. It goes to show that no matter the kind of environment we find ourselves and no matter the kind of blow that is thrown to us, we'll still find a way to pull through.
It's a time of love. Even in the midst of COVID-19, we can still show love to one another. We can still, demonstrate goodwill to one another. We can still preach the message of peace to one another during this period of Christmas. And I think those are the things that truly matters.
Like in other parts of the world, Nigeria is facing the devastating impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The country has confirmed thousands more cases, even as fears of a second wave of the virus sweep across the nation. Authorities have begun to reinforce restrictions which were relaxed initially. Many are keen to take precautions so as to ensure their safety and that of others. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Tanzanian President John Magufuli has called on world leaders to put God at the forefront in the fight against COVID-19. Magufuli made the call while attending a Christmas Mass at a church in the country's capital, Dodoma. CGTN's Isaac Lukando has more on how Tanzanians are celebrating Christmas.
Tanzania's president attended church early in the morning on Christmas Day. Following a rough year battling COVID-19 and its aftermath, the president is asking Tanzanians to be thankful. He is also calling upon world leaders to look to faith as a means of getting through the pandemic.
I call upon other nations and my fellow leaders to understand that there are some things that are impossible to the human mind, but possible with God. They should return to God and pray to Him. He is able even with a disease like the coronavirus, and the greatest evidence is here in Tanzania.
Some 400 kilometers away, the streets of Dar es Salaam are relatively empty. As a tradition, many of its residents are visiting friends and family up country. Some of those who have remained have flocked to the many beaches for some relaxation.
We thank our president. He has worked hard to keep the coronavirus at bay, and we are able to gather like this. Other countries don't have this opportunity. We thank God. We are enjoying ourselves with our fellow Tanzanians. We are happy.
While life in Tanzania appears normal, the government continues to fend off critics. It refutes claims of having a laxed stance on COVID-19. Tanzania began reopening for business in early June this year after the government claimed a drop in the number of COVID-19 patients. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
And here's what's coming up in your business headlines. A look at efforts to empower local contractors to meet Africa's needs for critical infrastructure. And Uganda plans to develop ports on the Lake Victoria to spur economic growth.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Let's delve into the latest in business now. E-commerce giant Alibaba's shares have dropped after China's market regulator announced an antitrust investigation into the firm on Thursday. The firm has said it will actively cooperate with the regulator on the investigation. CGTN's Gao Ang talked to an expert for some analysis on the move and where it might lead in the future.
China's latest move to tighten up the sprawling internet sector. The nation's market regulator has launched a probe into China's biggest tech firm Alibaba for alleged monopolistic behavior. Professor Qian Jun from Fudan University explains the aims of the investigation.
The point about antitrust regulation is to, first, make sure customers are still getting the best service at the lowest cost, and the customers are not hurt when the platforms become more dominant, if you will. So that's important. And secondly, of course, the investigation is specifically about whether merchants still have a choice.
The regulator has specifically cited Alibaba's practice of forcing merchants to choose one of two. It requires them to sell products exclusively on the Alibaba platform and shun its rivals. Some of those competitors, including JD.com, have complained and even accused Alibaba for such practices. Yet to create a healthy market, Professor Qian stresses the importance of competition.
As long as there's enough competition among the platforms, even though they're not exactly equal in size or in types of services they provide, as long as there's competition, then merchants should have more freedom in terms of selecting platform to enter, right? So we always say that competition is a very good cure for monopoly.
The regulator's probe follows the suspension of Alibaba's fintech arm Ant Group's IPO in November. And China is not only the country to launch such antitrust investigations into big firms. In October, the U.S. government sued Google for alleged anti-competitive behavior, including abusing its dominance in online search and advertising. Tech giants Amazon and Apple also face similar antitrust probes. Cases like the investigation into Alibaba are not only seen in China. As other nations also face similar behavior by big companies, it raises an important question: how to regulate the market to be healthy and fair, while at the same time still encouraging tech innovation. Gang, CGTN, Beijing.
And returning to the continent, inadequate infrastructure remains a major obstacle for African economies intent on achieving their full economic potential. With the continent being home to some of the fastest growing economies worldwide before the pandemic, meeting the demand for key basic infrastructure is a significant priority. At least 600 million Africans, for example, are still not connected to grid electricity. The African Development Bank estimates the funding gap for the continent's infrastructure needs is well over $100 billion each year. CGTN's Yasser Hakim examines the efforts being made to support the development of homegrown contractors who can take on this challenge.
Many African states lack the proper infrastructure. Africa needs $170 billion annually to have a fully developed infrastructure by 2050. That's in addition to 10 million new housing units every year for the growing populations in the continent. Many of these projects are done by more experienced foreign contractors. African companies also have a share of the construction. But Hassan Abdelaziz, the president of the African Federation of Construction Contractors Association, says it's not enough.
Since our federation was established in March 2006, there has become more interest in local African contractors. Today, there are strong companies in countries such as Egypt, Morocco and South Africa too. Yet, they are not enough to develop Africa. You need new roads, railways, water projects, sewage, electricity, energy, telecom and more. This requires thousands of qualified companies to work on it.
The Federation is currently working on improving conditions for local companies to be able to survive and grow.
We have succeeded to convince the African Development Bank to give 5 to 7% priority to local contractors in tenders for infrastructure projects. We are pushing some demands to the AU. For example, any foreign company working in the continent has to have a local partner to gain experience from the foreign company. Laborers in the building sectors have to come from African countries to reduce unemployment rates. Building materials should be from African countries as well.
To make African companies more competitive, the Federation is providing training programs in Egypt and Morocco to their technicians, engineers, laborers and management teams, under the supervision of the African Union. Yasser Hakim, CGTN, Cairo.
Staying with North Africa, the Tunisian government says the COVID-19 pandemic has affected housing and infrastructure projects in the country and the region. During an online meeting of the Council of Arab Ministers of Housing and Reconstruction, experts outlined difficulties that the sectors face as well as opportunities available during the post-COVID-19 period. Adnan Shawashi brings us the details.
The Tunisian Syndicate of Real Estate Developers has revealed that over 60% of building and housing projects have stalled since the outbreak of the pandemic this year. The experts say that the first general lockdown in March and the second wave of the pandemic paralyzed this vital economic sector.
Real estate developers are on the top of the pyramid of the construction sector. The impact of the pandemic has been disastrous on all related business activities like building materials, brick, ceramic tiles, marble, cement and steel factories. The list is very long. Tens of thousands of jobs were lost due to the COVID-19 crisis. The cost of building is much higher because companies are facing difficulties and the price of building materials has skyrocketed.
Authorities in Tunis say that developing affordable social housing is a national priority. They want urban development plans updated so as to devote more space for social housing projects.
There is a gap between population growth and economic growth. Tunisia witnessed skyrocketing prices of real estate and the deterioration of purchasing power during the pandemic. We want to control prices to meet the needs of low-income groups and encourage property developers to invest in social housing.
Experts have noted that nearly a third of the Arab urban population lives in slums or informal neighborhoods. The Arab economy could experience a 5% decline due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which will push up to 25% of the Arab population to live below the poverty line.
We'll provide some 10,000 houses within 2 years. Uncontrolled construction proliferated during the pandemic. Rising land prices and high construction costs of new houses are among the main causes of this phenomenon. The state's role is to intervene by facilitating access to land. There are challenges but also opportunities in this period.
According to the UN Human Settlements Program for the Middle East and North Africa region, 70% of the Arab population will reside in urban areas by 2050. The number of urban dwellers is also expected to more than double between 2010 and 2050 in the region. 12 ministers took part in the online Arab Housing Conference in Tunisia this week. They agreed to offer financial and fiscal incentives to the private sector to foster the implementation of the social housing projects and to support property developers who are affected by the pandemic. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Turning to Uganda, where residents of Port Bell along the largest lake in Africa are optimistic that the government's plans to develop ports on the lake will spur further economic growth. Port Bell serves as a critical logistics link to Tanzania to its south and Kenya to the east. Leon Senyange now reports.
This is Port Bell, a major inland port on the outskirts of Uganda's capital, Kampala. Dickson Katende calls this place home. He has lived here for over 2 decades now.
People of Port Bell like life. They could breathe off the lake to come and eat their fish, chill down and relax their minds so that they can think for future.
Named after British Commissioner Hesketh Bell more than a century ago, the port has gone through a series of transformations. Ruth Akankwasa now earns her pay selling fish at the market in the area. She admits the port still offers less for its potential.
Our place is bigger than some ports, but its planning is still poor. If you move around, we have shops. People like being here. We only need better infrastructure.
Nearby, the ferries are berthed, and many of the young people can only look on, hoping for work. Some have settled for the odd jobs that come by. More than 1,000 people live and work on this port, but with limited opportunities. There is hope that will change when the water transport route from here to other ports on Lake Victoria is fully developed. There are already plans to remodel the port that will allow more ferries from Kenya's Kisumu and Tanzania's Mwanza ports to dock here. It's a plan Saleh Muyinda wants to see come to fruition.
At Port Bell, we only have parking for 2 or 3 ships. The government wants to expand. Some of us have applied for jobs when that happens. We are hopeful.
The government wants to turn Port Bell into a small-scale cargo port. Local passenger traffic will be enhanced too. Those are plans Saleh, Dixon and many others around Port Bell can only wait on. And hopefully that will inject more life here. Leon Senyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Thank you for staying with us here on Africa Live. It's time for us to take another short break, but stay with us. Here's what's coming up. We take a look at a photographic exhibition underway in Cape Town examining the fragility, importance and beauty of the world's oceans.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are 2 of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Welcome back. Let's turn to South Africa, where a new exhibition is underway in Cape Town and is hoping to deliver a powerful conservational message about the fragility, importance and beauty of the world's oceans. Unlike most exhibitions that take place inside galleries, Wild Seas is a photographic exhibition that uses the backdrop of the wild Atlantic Ocean. CGTN's Travers Andrews has more with this report.
It's visually striking, powerful, and is a tribute to the wonderland of the world's oceans. It's also a reminder of how fragile and vulnerable the oceans are to issues such as overfishing and climate change. Wild Seas is an exhibition by the Save Our Seas Foundation and comprises of 31 stunning images that adorn the seawall along the Sea Point Promenade. The location is a popular walking spot for many Cape Townians and provided a novel background for the exhibition's strong focus on ocean conservation.
I just walked past it pretty quickly and the images were just flashing at me and I wasn't really taking it in, and then I stopped and read one of these and then I came back and I just went through every single one. It took me about half an hour. Each one is just so fascinating in its own right.
Some of the imagery focuses on the impact shark fishing is having on the seas, while others focus on coastal communities and their relationship with the ocean. Vivid and striking in detail, the pictures also capture rare moments that are not often seen and are accompanied by a storyline for context.
I think it's raising awareness in a good way, and people need to adhere to it and respect what we have, and as well as enjoy it at the same time, but we need to preserve it for life, for mankind moving forward.
Most of the images are dedicated to subjects such as sharks, whales and seabirds, but others feature as well. Now, one of the underlying themes of this exhibition is the devastating impact plastic pollution is having on the ocean and the marine life, which has especially become a problem here in the Western Cape.
I think it's very indicative of how damaging plastic is to our environment, and this says it perfectly. As I say, in the backdrop just adds to the importance of protecting our environment.
For now, the exhibition is set to run for 6 months and will no doubt reach many people, highlighting the stark realities the ocean is facing and its broader impact on the world. Travers Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Now, Senegal is known for its rich and vast culture that dates back centuries. It is also famous for its cuisine and has been pushing to popularize its national dish, Tiebu Dien, beyond its borders. Last September, it submitted a file to have the home-style meal listed under the UNESCO World Intangible Cultural Heritage. According to the authorities, the objective is to promote cultural diversity and the Senegalese culinary heritage.
In Senegal, a popular rice dish known as the Tiebu Dien is said to highlight the local culture and identity of its people. It is prepared with fish, rice, carrots, cassava, onions, chili, and many other ingredients. The meal requires around 2 hours of both preparation and cooking time. It is considered a staple food and one of the country's greatest recipes. And now, Senegal wants to put it on a map.
Nous avons un patrimoine culinaire très riche.
We have a very rich and varied culinary heritage, but unfortunately we don't know it. By submitting a file for the inscription of the Tiebu Dien UNESCO's World Intangible Cultural Heritage List, we are promoting all the local gastronomy. Gastronomy is very important for the intangible heritage. I believe that if Tiebu Dien is inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List, it will enhance and promote Senegalese gastronomy. This will also allow us to reopen the Senegal Gastronomy Fair, which will be held annually to show the nutritional value of our gastronomy.
The idea has been well received across the country.
We will be very happy if one day our national dish is listed on the UNESCO list of World Heritage. From generation to generation, the tiabu dien is the first dish that mothers teach their daughters to prepare. I assure you that there is no Senegalese woman who does not know how to cook the tiabu dien, because it is the favorite dish of all Senegalese people.
I even think that this dish is known beyond the borders of our country. For example, if you ask foreigners what is the best dish in Senegal, they will tell you tiabu dien. This is why we welcome the idea of including it in the UNESCO World Heritage List. This will give even more value to our dish, the tiabu dien. And we hope that people will come from various countries to taste our famous dish.
Senegal already boasts 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. If selected, the tiabu dien will be the very first Senegalese intangible asset to be listed as a UNESCO World Heritage. Chamwono, CGTN.
And here's what we have in store for you in the sport. Young talent Galliano Boni set to take the world with martial arts skills.
The year 2020. It was a year like none before, shaped by the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa, seemingly spared the worst of it, still took a huge hit with unprecedented disruptions to healthcare, the social and economic order. Climate change also took its toll on Africa. Shifts in temperature affected food productivity and availability of water and the overall security of the African people. The continent saw major political changes too. Several countries held successful elections despite the pandemic, while others made strides towards lasting peace. This was 2020, a year unique in so many ways. CGTN will highlight some of the top stories we covered as the year unfolded.
Invasion in several parts of the country.
Welcome back. Now, South Africa's very own karate kid is taking the world by storm. 10-year-old Galliano Boni has 50 world titles to his name. 17 of those are world championship medals, more than half of which he won in online tournaments during the COVID-19 lockdown. CGTN's Julie Shire now reports.
While most children would have spent time playing during the COVID-19 lockdown, 10-year-old karate